Oh, this is a good one. And this is one that touches me because I've been in academia my whole adult life. Ever since I was a kid, I was always into studying, school, learning, books, and my hobby is to read. I mean, it's a very passionate part of my life to learn and to share knowledge. So this man comes in to see me, and he's very somber, very, very sad. But you can tell that this is not just some superficial sadness. He's distraught sad. I mean, he's affected by what's going on. And I read, when a person comes into the office, they fill out a piece of paper. So I go through the piece of paper, whatever. Then I put it down and let's talk. What's going on with you? Who are you? Like, what's going on in your life, in your heart, in your mind, And he doesn't say anything. He simply hands me a piece of paper. I read it. And the piece of paper is basically a report from an expert, an academic expert, saying that essentially this man is not capable of college work. Now, by then, when he first came in, he was already in his 50s. He had not gone to school, in high school, or, he had the high school equivalent, a GED, basically. He never finished high school back in his age, He was not academically inclined, but by the time he got to his 50s, he was interested in learning, and his mind had changed. Life had taught him a few lessons, and now he did want to go to school. So he signed up to community college classes. He took care of his GED stuff, signed up for the community college, started taking classes, but he couldn't pass the English classes. You have to write, and you have to, in every community college, the first year you take 2 or 3 English classes, composition, and you have to write, and you have to... And, this man couldn't pass those classes. And after failing the same class 2 or 3 times, one of the professors there suggested that he gets some sort of evaluation. They refer him to an expert who can evaluate his ability to do college work. The expert writes his report after some sort of test, saying that this man was not capable of college work because he just didn't have enough wits about him. He just wasn't smart enough, I guess. And I read the letter, and I said, well, what do you want to do? After I read the letter, I just asked him, what do you want to do? He says, well, I want to study. I want to be able to study. And what's interesting is that this was many years ago. I was much younger back then, more passionate. I wouldn't do that today, but I assumed that the piece of paper that he handed me was a copy, a photocopy. So I said, you know what? And I crumpled the paper and I threw it to the side. I tossed it to the side. I said, this doesn't matter. Back then, I thought that this was the theatrics of hypnotism would somehow appeal to his sense of, I don't know, he laughed a little bit. He didn't really care about that piece of paper either. And what I meant by that motion is that this piece of paper, this verdict over here, this opinion over here is not going to stop your future. Then it occurred to me. I asked him, well, you told me that you're taking classes at the community college and you haven't passed your English classes. I understand that. But what about your the other classes? What other classes have you taken? This man was an A and B student in all his other classes. He had trouble reading and writing. But he passed all his other classes with A's and B's. He was doing well in college. He couldn't do the composition work. He couldn't write. Whatever the issue, he was not a foreigner. Like, he spoke English clearly. No accent. I mean, he was native born here. And he basically couldn't pass those classes for whatever reason. Well, it turns out we go into hypnosis. We work diligently with hypnotherapy for a few sessions, several sessions. And one day he finds the issue. He goes into hypnosis. I ask him in the hypnotic state what's going on. He says, I don't know. Now, when he says that, of course, the hypnotist is in tune with the person. And instead of saying, well, you don't know, it's not working, instead of saying that, I say, well, who are you saying that to? Because in his mind, he was actually speaking to somebody. In the hypnotic state, this happens. He says, well, I don't know. I said, who you're talking to? I'm talking to my dad. It turns out that he was having an argument with his dad about not being able to do English homework. Now, the dad was a historian. He actually taught history in high school. And he was all about reading and writing. And it's so interesting how they had an argument about homework, about him not doing well in class. But he tells me, right, he's like 10 years old or 12 years old. He's having this argument with his dad. And as he's recounting the story, in the hypnotic state, he's aware of the fact that there really isn't any problem there. He just wants to spend more time with his dad. He wants to play more. So he kind of comes up with a drama, if you will, to call attention. Now, of course, these words and these explanations come from the adult's mind. As a kid, as a 10-year-old kid, I don't think he's willfully planning on creating a drama to get dad's attention. That's just what happened. But later on, as an adult in therapy, he can recount his events, he can recall all of this in the hypnotic state, and he realizes that there's just some sort of drama there because he wants more of his dad's attention and time. Well, the dad gets really upset because adults don't get that. The dad gets upset and takes off, has a car accident, and basically never comes home. And the kid basically feels bad about that. We had an argument. I told my dad that how kids talk to parents when they get upset. Oh, I hate you, this, that, whatever. And whatever he said to his dad, that goes out. An accident can happen to anybody, but it happened to his dad. Dad never came home. And in his mind, he kept associating dad leaving, dad dying, with me not being able to read and write again like my dad did. Because his dad was so passionate about reading and writing, he was a history teacher. He would always coach his kid. He would do homework together, not all the time, but they had that's where they shared time. That's their bonding, was around books and writing and reading. By his dad leaving and dying after an argument, something triggered in his mind where he decided never to touch the subject again. This was a smart man who had not gone to college as a youth because he didn't think he could do it. And years later, in his 50s, when he goes to school, he cannot pass one type of class, although he's getting A and B's in the other classes. Inorganic chemistry, math 101. He can pass all those classes just fine, but he couldn't do the reading and writing that the English composition classes required of him. He forgives himself, he forgives all of that. He goes on, and I was so happy that day, the day I received in the mail an invitation for his college graduation, to which I went and gave him a big hug. Of course, I told you already, this was many years ago, I couldn't quite help myself. I asked him if he also sent an invitation to the profession that told him that he couldn't do college work, but that was just a little, I wouldn't do that nowadays. This was many years ago. But it was interesting because he was so proud, and I was so proud of him. He did it all on, he did it. He graduated. That was his dream. Of course, that came with an improvement in salary, positions, and so forth, but it wasn't even the point of it. He just wanted to graduate from college, which he did. And I was there at the commencement ceremony, so happy for him.